Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. And today is one of those big number episodes. We are on podcast number 80. Welcome everybody.
80. Wow.
Couldn't believe it, David. You know, when we started, how would we have known that we're going to get to number 80? And today, you know, we have a very special guest. We have one of the Sutton Summit realtors, James Clark, here with us. James, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, James. And you use your middle name too, right? James Clark Jones.
James Clark Jones. Yeah, there's too many James Joneses out there, David. So when I got into music, once the internet hit, I've been a musician forever. Then once the internet hit, I started using my middle name so you could find me.
Yeah. Well, the internet is just a fad. It's just a fad. So don't get too used to it. It's like the hula.
That's right. Thank you.
Well, we're here today and we have a very, very important topic. But before we get into it, James, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, your background? I see there's a guitar in the back. So curious to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I've been in real estate for 9 years and I have a broker designation, and it's a fascinating, interesting, stressful world. However, the last 3 years, I've been sober now for 3 years. And it's been a life-changing thing for me. I'll just briefly say that it's changed my life and it's important to me. And I've now created a podcast myself called Sober in 60. And it's on all the platforms: Audible, Spotify, Amazon, etc., and YouTube as well. And it's just I've been writing a lot about it, and just trying to rebuild a life that was lost for 30 years in a sea of alcohol. So I'm here now. I'm still here, and hoping that really it's not about me. The podcast is about helping others who are my age-ish, you know, that late middle-aged guy who may not have somewhere to turn necessarily. And if my story can inspire them or teach them something, fantastic. But really it's about, if I can do this, you can do this. And that's really the focus of the podcasts themselves.
Well,
so thanks for having me.
Well, it was really a pleasure to have you on, James. And I'd like to hear more about the background, you know, what you were doing, you know, during all those years and that created the issue in the first place. Like it's an incredibly inspirational story, what you're doing now. So we'll get back to that. But just take us back to how the problem sort of started when you look back on it now.
Well, how long is the podcast? I was a musician and a singer-songwriter and a performer and writer for decades, and I still do it. I still play and I still write. I've got a bunch of albums out and that kind of thing. So it was easier to be an addict when you're in the music business because you're an artist, you're a musician. And I'd have periods where I didn't have work, you know, because you would tour, you would play, you would record, and you'd have these periods. So you could disappear into your hole of in my case, it was drinking. So, and it took a few relationships I was in over time for them to say, you've got a real problem here, and I had to address it. So it's been probably 30 years of, 33 years now that I've been sober 3 years, but 30 years where I was in a big, dark, deep hole of alcohol. And I didn't know how to get out of it. I knew I needed to, but I didn't really know how. How you get into it, boy, there's a lot of reasons why people get into any kind of addiction. I believe that some people naturally have a chemical addiction to alcohol. They have a drink at 14 and they're hooked. Most of us did not set out in high school to binge drink and think, I'll be doing this 40 years from now. But that's how it happens. And it's usually, in my experience, and this is anecdotal, but I've done some research, really it's about, there's trauma, PTSD, there's depression, there's mental illness, there's pain, there's something there. and as men, as guys, and the podcast is really directed at guys my age or people who care about them. The problem is we were raised to be quiet and work and not share this with anybody. So if there was pain or trauma or any kind of damage, just get on with it. And I'm a Scottish guy. My dad's a Scottish farmer, or was, God bless him. And he said, just get on with it. I don't want to hear about it. And so that was that generation. And I think a lot of it just kind of kept it in. And so it became internalized.
James, I think what you're doing is phenomenal. And I think it's really important, but I'd still like to go back a little bit and hear a little bit more about, music, about that lifestyle, about how you transitioned into real estate, because, I think a lot of those aspects are part of some of those triggers, right? And I want our audience to really get to know you and get to know your story and understand, what your background was like that contributed to this situation and to your recovery, right? Because I think both are so important. But I want to dig in a little bit more and peel back a few more layers and just get to know James a little bit more.
Well, I think alcohol is something that in my, coming from a Scottish background, alcohol is very much a part of the culture. You go to the pub, and I find you use alcohol until alcohol starts to use you. And frankly, and I'm not a prohibitionist. I don't believe it should be outlawed, or, if you want to drink, it's your business. It's not my business. If you want to stop, then it becomes kind of my business. I want to help you, right? But I think you get into it, and before you know it, you're in deep. And there's a lot of people listening who are in real estate, who may be in hospitality, who may be CEOs, who may be bus drivers. Everybody in your workplace, somebody you know, but quietly are having alcohol problems, or you may recognize it. It might even be yourself. So it's endemic, like it's everywhere. You can't turn on a TV show without someone celebrating at the end of their day with a glass of wine. And that's great if you could have a glass of wine. But for some of us, the glass of wine becomes a bottle. and it's not a good place. And I think it affected my music life. I think I could have been a better writer if I had been sober. It's a myth to say, with the exception of Keith Richards, who's an anomaly, I think mostly artists need to be clean and sober to do their best work, regardless of your art. But in my time, coming in, joining in as a musician in the early 80s and following that thing, it was every bar had live music. Every bar was smoking. I had cigarettes going on stage. We had booze coming up to us and putting on tables, and it was just part of the lifestyle. And it becomes part of the lifestyle, I think. So it's easier when you're in the arts to get involved in that, as opposed to if you work in an office. It's more apparent that you're drinking all the time.
Do you remember a certain tour or a certain event that you were a part of where, that bottle was placed on the table and you reached for it and you thought to yourself, wow, is this really what my life is coming to? Is this, the same old? I'm reaching for this bottle again. Did you ever have those feelings when you were touring?
No, I loved it. It was so harmful, but I was dealing with personal stuff from when I was little and young, and that it was dulling it, hiding it. And that's where most people are drinking, or they're doing drugs, or they're gamblers, they're overeating, that kind of thing, right? It's you're numbing it, right? It wasn't until 3 years ago I woke up on February 25th, 2020. That's the day that I realized, if you don't stop now, you're going to die. And so that was it. And I had to make that decision then. Boy, that was a rough time. Can I just point out, sorry guys, a little off track. I make this clear in all my podcasts. If you're a drinker, you probably need to detox. Do not quit cold turkey. You can go into seizure. You can die. Like it's a dangerous business to go cold turkey. So you need to see a doctor or something like that. But I think way more people drink than we realize. And I think it's endemic to our society. I'm not against drinking. If you want to drink, it's your business. You want to smoke, it's your business. You want to smoke weed, it's your business. It's not my business, right? But it was my business when it was hurting me to the point where I'd lost relationships, I'd lost business, I'd lost gigs, And as you get older, you have less window to come back from that. So
Yeah. So James, I got a whole probably 100 questions right now, but let me start with one. Like my understanding of all of this of addiction, whether it's alcohol or it's drugs or it's gambling or name the next vice that everybody has or little has a little bit of, it's part of a personality, right? I think that's what you sort of come to know, that certain people are more prone to it than other people. Like you have what's called like an addictive personality. So certain guys, like you said, like the Scottish lifestyle, and it's not restricted to Scottish people by any means, but you work hard at your work, and then on the way home you go to the pub and see your buddies and you have a pint. And some guys can have one pint, or they might have maybe they'll have a second pint, and then they're off and they go home. And other guys, never leave the bar. You got Norm from Cheers at the end of the bar, who's just keeps going, right?
right.
So am I correct that like some have that sort of addictive personality, and it sort of catches up to them, and other people are luckier, for lack of a better term?
I think so, David. The drinkers that drink publicly are less of a concern to me than the drinkers that drink quietly at home. And I'm in the latter category. I could go to the pub. I've never been cut off in a bar. When I quit and I went back to my old haunt, and the bartender said, I never had a problem with you because I was good at it. I could drink a lot. But when I got home is when the real work started, so I would be more concerned with that. Yes, I think some people are prone to certain addictions. I don't know. That must be some evolutionary thing that's in our development that and smarter people than I can talk about this. This is just anecdotal experience for myself. I was a bartender too for a long time, and I played in bars for a long time. I can spot a fellow drunk from across the room at 50 paces. There's a look in the eye that's just there. And I follow Robin Sharma right now. He's a podcaster and a writer on the 5 a.m. Club, if you guys are familiar with that. And he talks a lot about how few people actually can explore the interior of themselves to get beyond the addiction, right? So like I might, what I'm tackling right now, sugar. Like I can eat a bag of chocolate covered almonds. That's not good.
That's
right?
not good. No,
it's not good.
Tell me that. I thought
right?
that was that's my health food.
Right. And my ex-wife couldn't take sugar at all. Like just she'd have wine and go, that's fine. Like I couldn't understand that. She could have a half a glass of wine and go, I don't want it anymore. So I think you're correct in that. So we have to be if there's people in our lives we care about and we see they can go down that path, gambling, overeating, sugar, alcohol, whatever it is, for sure.
I mean, personality, I think, is one aspect of it, but I have this theory, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I think as a society, a day has 24 hours. And if you don't have a hobby, or if you don't have something to fill that time, you look for fillers, and you look for easy fillers, right? So how do you pass the time? Like you're sitting at home, it's 7 p.m. I know we have the TV and I know we have Netflix, but how do you take the edge off, right? I've played sports most of my life, and David Korman, I know you have too, right? And sometimes, I would feel like I'm addicted to sports. Like I would go play table tennis when I was younger, like 4 days a week, 3 hours a day. That was like my vice, my addiction, but it was a healthy one.
Yes.
And I think that, it's people who don't have that kind of an outlet, people that don't have hobbies, people that don't have something to really ground them, I think they're more susceptible to choosing something that's easier, or an easy outlet, like drugs, like alcohol, like abusive substances like that. So my message always, like, you know, when I have the opportunity to mentor young people, like we're involved in Pinball Clemens Foundation that deals with youth that have issues, and you know, it's such a wonderful program. But whenever I'm talking to young people, my message to them is always, listen, make sure you find something that keeps you grounded, that you're passionate about, right? That you can go, whether it's horseback riding or tennis or hockey or hiking or collecting stamps, whatever it is, you know, have something that you can put your attention on, so, you know, you don't get yourself into trouble, right? And you know, it's unfortunate that these substances are so readily available. You know, you can, you know, they're at arm's length, you know, our parents have them in the house, you know, and you know, it's a problem. It's a problem. But I think, you know, as a society, we are talking more about it. You know, James, your podcast is great. And, you know, when I heard what you're doing, and when I heard that it's your 3-year anniversary, I thought it was so important to get this message out there. And I want to share some statistics with you guys. I took a look at some statistics, and, you know, they're really eye-opening. You know, there's a lot more research and a lot more statistics about the States. So I am going to talk about some of them, because I think it's really important to understand how big this issue is, right? But according to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 19.7 million American adults battled a substance abuse disorder in 2017. 19.7. Like, let's really think about that number. And these are people who have reported their issue to somebody, and actually, you know, somebody was aware that they're battling this issue. And James, you can talk about this. How many people, for every person that reports this issue and looks for help, how many people are out there that don't say anything to anybody and battle with it internally?
Yes. So people, especially guys, because of the way we're raised, and keep things pretty quiet, right? And we hide things because it shows a weakness. Like, even talking about mental illness now, you know, depression empties. I just wrote the depression empties souls, and alcohol fills that void. So there's a lot of mental illness and trauma and PTSD and other things that it's trying to fill, right? So we can talk about it now. My dad's generation, forget it, can talk to him about this. And his dad's generation, like, it was a tougher life back then, right? So I'm very optimistic that the next generation will be able to use exercise. And it's great to be addicted to exercise. That's awesome, right? Or I love literature, I love books, I love playing music. Like, that's my addiction now, right? I'm a book nerd, right? I read all the time, I play guitar all the time, and I'm a full-time realtor. Let me just make that clear. But it's definitely something that the younger generation will be less involved in intoxicants, because they have more of an outlet to understand the serious ramifications of alcohol in the body. For instance, what we thought about smoking in the 20th century, now we look at smoking and go, I can't believe that they hid those stats, how bad that is for you, you know? So be healthy. There's a lot of great YouTube people out there. There's a guy named Andrew Huberman. He's a Stanford professor, and he's got a great series of YouTube things on how, as guys, how things we do affect our bodies, right? And if you want to live, a friend of mine died a few years ago of alcohol. He was only 70. He was a young 70. You know, he was a self-made guy, wealthy guy. But as I write in one of the podcasts, a liver is a liver. Once it goes, you're done. So there is a tipping point there, you know. But addiction to sports is fantastic. You know, I love it. So
Yeah, and listen, this is a big problem. I'm just going to go back into the statistics for one more second. But, you know, overdose deaths in the United States have increased for the 11th consecutive year in a row. 70,630 people lost their lives from overdose deaths in 2019, right? And then when you take a look at, you know, how big is this issue? 740 billion in lost annual revenue from workplace productivity, healthcare expenses, and crime-related costs, according to a study by the National Institute on Drug Abuse in the United States. Right. And then the National Association of Realtors has also done a lot of study on this issue. And, real estate is one of those professions where it's higher, like the substance abuse is higher than a lot of the other professions, because sales is such a up and down industry, and it's filled with anxiety and stresses, right? So I mean, this is an industry where we are very affected by this. And again, James, I think you sharing your story is phenomenal, and I think our industry needs to hear it.
Thank you. If I could just add, my concern is suicides and middle-aged men in North America. The suicide rate is almost off the charts. I'm not saying there's a correlation between alcohol and that, but I'm just saying there's a lot of people we need to connect with or reach, or let them know that there's avenues for them to make their life better, and it doesn't have to be necessarily these ends. But I mean, stats don't lie, right, David? I mean, we're in the real estate world. We look at stats all the time. Clients call me all the time. What do you think of the market? Where's it going? And I said, well, the stats show us this. And they don't want to believe it but stats almost, well, I shouldn't say stats almost never lie, because you can manipulate them, right?
You can interpret
but what's that?
You can interpret stats different ways, right, sometimes, but
what's that?
But you need the stats. You need the underlying stats to understand what's going on.
Right. But if X% of people are dying by a suicide or addicted, or as David has the results, if we look at the market and say, well, in the last 12 months, this is what's happened in the Niagara area, for instance. Yeah, well, I see where you're going with this. We don't want to manipulate that data, and it can be done, like certain people do it. But really, overall, stats are stats. So I'm concerned about the numbers don't lie in what David's saying with addiction and I'm saying about suicides. That's a concern for me, because it's a quiet death. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about their dad or their cousin who killed them, because it's an awful thing to think about. And it's a pretty heavy subject to be talking about, even on a podcast. But boy, it is so prevalent, guys. Like I always end my Facebook post with, reach out if I can help. Not that I'm anybody, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a professional, but sometimes you just need to have someone to listen to.
Well, I think it's good that in general, sort of a general comment, that we do talk about it more than we did. And James make a great point, like in our dad's generation and in our grandfather's generation, like there was no chance. Like it was just, you got a problem, that's his problem, and no one was really reaching out. It was like what you were told, go fix your problem and then come back and and talk. Yeah. We're not in that world anymore. So and I don't think this is I think we all know that in the music industry, it was sort of an easier industry to get involved in that. It's just part of it. You're playing in a bar, you're performing in a bar, you're in a studio. We've all seen videos of the Stones and the Beatles, like the greatest bands in history, and when they're recording, like they're constantly drinking. It's just part of that culture. It's easier to see that than you see it in a real estate culture or in a law culture. But I can tell you, the Law Society has very strong programs now that they're pushing out constantly to make sure that we're all aware of it. There's help out there for any lawyer that needs it, whether it's an addictive issue or it's just a depression, anxiety issue. There's now programs available, and they're constantly sending out bulletins and reminders that it's available to you. Like when I started practicing, there was nothing like that. The Law Society wasn't doing anything like that. And it's available for law clerks and staff. Like there's so much of that. And I think most industries are doing that now. They're recognizing it, because nothing's bulletproof. People suffer from depression, from anxiety. And David made a great point too. Some of it is too much idle time. And you've certainly come across that when you're a real estate agent, right? Sometimes you may have something booked in the evening, you may have a couple showings, you're running around with a client, but what are you doing from 8 in the morning until 5 o'clock? And sometimes you have, you maybe get your workout in. You still have a lot of time to think about how much business you're not doing and how quiet the market is.
That's
Right.
right.
And you stew with it. So
Yeah.
my fear is now that so many people, including me, are working from home now so much that over time we might have a bigger problem in society because we have too much home time and not away time.
Well, David, I look up to the law society and to the law industry, in the fact that you guys have so much regimented programs, right? And procedures and rules. And I think that's something that the real estate industry can really learn from. James, I haven't really seen any resources in the real estate industry for anybody suffering from addiction or substance abuse. And in my opinion, I certainly don't see a lot of conversation on that topic whatsoever. So, I mean, I'd love to work together, James, and maybe, put a program into place or keep raising awareness. I have seen no articles, I've seen no publications on this, and it's, there's certainly a lot of information out there in other industries and through other organizations, but nothing really particularly through the real estate industry, which is a big shame, I think, in my opinion.
I
Have
would
you
agree
seen
with you.
anything, James, as you were, you've
No.
been in the industry for a while, when you were suffering through this prior to 3 years ago, have you seen any sort of messaging or any sort of programs within our industry that addressed this issue or talked about this issue?
I have not. Think about how many realtors we have. I think on Trev, there's like 68,000 realtors. Like that's a lot of people. I'm telling you, a lot of those people have problems in their life, right? I don't, to be honest, I'm coming from the music background and a hospitality background where we were like a group, we were a team, we all worked together. I don't find that in real estate. And I get we're all competitors and we're trying to get listings and we're competing against each other. And, I'm 1%, I'm this, I'm that. And it's not, I don't find that there's a camaraderie there. Now, maybe I'm just not hooked up with the right group of people, and I tend to be a bit of a loner anyway. And I think a lot of real estate agents are very good as loners because it's a very loner business, right? And you can be, as David said, you have time. You need to fill your time. So I call it stacking your day, right? So I would love to have a program where we say, okay, who wants to join this? I'm being extreme here, but I'm a 5 a.m. guy, right? So there was a time I used to come home at 5 a.m. Now I get up at 5 a.m. and I start my day and I stack my day, right? So there's usually a workout. There's usually some reading that I'm doing. I'm catching up on the latest real estate thing I should know. I'm checking the markets. By 7 a.m., I have so much done. I've stacked my morning. I don't even think about it anymore. I give myself Sunday off, right? If we held each other accountable on that, I would love to have a group like that. But I've reached out to people to say, hey, are you interested in this? And not one person has said yes. No, I'm not saying there are people out there who would be interested in finding a way to keep each other, okay, we're going to keep each other in line and so forth. But I hear what you're saying, David, and I agree with you. But I find it's a business very much a loner business. And maybe I'm not saying loner is not the right word, but it's an individual type business. And I've been in the business 9 years, and I can count on one hand with 3 fingers missing how many friends I have that are realtors. It's just, I always find, even when you're talking to them over coffee, there's a little, like they're fishing for some information from you, and it's hard to let your guard down when you're in a very competitive industry like this. And I know I'm getting off topic with that here, but to your point, there's got to be like-minded people out there that go, you know what? My wife has a problem, or my cousin, or I do, right? And I'm in the real estate business. We have a duty of care to our clients, right? We have a fiduciary duty, a duty of care. We have a code of ethics. I try to be respectful to all the agents that I deal with. I try to be respectful to the brokerage, and I love being with Sutton Summit. If I dealt with David with a client, I try to be respectful. It's hard because you're getting a lot of different people in a lot of different places in their life, and it can be very emotional, right? Can be very stressful when deals go sideways and that kind of thing. So I think it tends to move us towards looking at, when I drank and I'd have a really bad day in real estate, I'd come home and my girlfriend would say, how big is the pour? Because I've had a really bad day in real, and I'm prospecting and I'm not getting any new clients. And as everybody out there knows, we're on 100% commission. When you're not selling or buying, you're not making any money and you still have expenses. And I would come home and she'd just blub, 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 blub the bottle. God bless her. And that was my release from the work. That is not healthy. And that's not what I want other realtors, especially new realtors getting into the business and realtors who are looking to build and develop their craft. I would love to have with David, if we came up with something where we could build something, even if it's a Facebook group, right?
Well, listen, I think,
sorry to go off there.
No, listen, I think talking about this is the first step, right? And I agree with you that the traditional outlook on our industry when you're within our industry is, that competitiveness, but it's changing. And I think, at Sutton Summit, we're really trying to build a different culture, right? And we're trying to approach the market with a sense of, that there's an abundance of business out there, right? Not a scarcity mindset. I think when you have a scarcity mindset as a sales professional, I think that's when, you tend to look at the world in a much different way, look at the industry much different way. But when you look at the industry from, hey, there's an abundance of business out there, there's so much business out there that there's room and space for everybody, right? And when you start to collaborate and share ideas, you become stronger as a team. And this has been proven time and time again. And there's different networking events out there in our industry. The Bus Conference comes to mind, but there's a lot of other really excellent networking events where we're seeing collaboration happen. We're seeing that share of ideas. We're seeing that flow of ideas. And what it's doing is it's really raising the bar in the industry, and it's making us stronger together, right? So I think it starts from you, anybody listening. I challenge you, reach out and offer a hand to your colleagues, right? Share ideas. Don't be afraid of somebody stealing something, or don't have that scarcity mindset. Like we're in this together and we're going to be stronger together. Like the reason we're doing these podcasts, David, Korman and I, is because we love this industry. We want to share, we want to give back, right? And I think when you approach it from that point of view, I think magic happens, right? And people get addicted to that. And when you participate and you give back, like you're doing, James, like what you're doing is no different, right? You just started a podcast, you're sharing your story. Like that's not easy to do, but you're hoping that your story positively affects and influences people, right? So I think, we need to start changing our mindset on an individual level. And it's not going to happen overnight. But if everybody starts thinking like this in the industry, where, hey, let's share, let's put that scarcity mentality away, and let's work together to help each other, first and foremost, share ideas and elevate. And what the topic that we're talking about today, is there a better example of being vulnerable? Right? Is there a better example of really putting yourself out there and saying, hey, there is an issue in this industry. We're not a bulletproof industry. In fact, statistically, we're one of the most effective, disproportionately, industries out there. Is sales, right? Professionals, and especially 100% commission professionals like we are. And that scarcity mindset is a contributing factor to that.
Can I just jump in for a second, David?
Sure.
Thank you for saying it that way. That's what I was struggling to say. That it's an abundance versus a scarcity mindset, right? And I think we so easily, as realtors, you have a bad quarter or you've lost a client to someone else and you're working really hard, and we're humans. We're all feeling something. There's feelings here. We're just human beings, right? And you can't help but feel. So that is exactly how you've got to get. And if you stack your morning
Yep.
with things that need to be done that you don't even think about because you've just done them all, you've so kickstarted your day. That's kind of what I was getting at, but I'm glad you said the abundance, because I didn't mean to go down the scarcity thing. Just saying that's how you go dark. And in my case, it was easy for me to drink because drinking was my way out of bad stuff. Now, I can tell anybody listening, as you guys would understand, of course, that is not a healthy way to be. Quite frankly, I'm surprised I'm still alive. I can't even begin to tell you how much I used to drink. It was, and I could drink a lot, right? So it was hidden though.
I wanna, point this out to the audience, because having an issue, right, has nothing to do with the quantity of alcohol that you're consuming. In my opinion, it's the consistency. Even if you're having, a small drink every day, that can be an issue affecting your health, your sleep, how your body functions, right? And,
yeah,
especially if you want to be at the top of your game, anybody that I look up to, I'm going to mention their name. I really look up to Sam Magdaddy when it comes to alcohol use, right? Because Sam has never drank in his entire life. And he's probably one of the highest performing realtors
absolutely
I know of. Right. And a lot of the top performers, like, if you want to be the best,
yes,
it starts with you.
Yes.
Like you said, we have a duty of care to our clients. Absolutely. But we also have a duty of care to us, right? You need to be at the top of your game. You need to have, the energy. You need to have the clarity of mind. You need to have the work ethic. You need to have consistency. You need to have great sleeping patterns to perform at your best. And we're not talking about, being a good sales performer. We're talking about being the best of the best of the best, right? And that takes discipline.
Yes.
Right? That's not, it's not as easy as, okay, I'm going to get out of bed and, what am I going to do today? No, those people, they know exactly what's on their agenda. Right? They set themselves up for success, and they invest into their bodies, into, having the right clarity, having the right energy, eating right, exercising, and they would never put poison into their body, because that's really what we're doing. Right? Alcohol is poison. True. It's just,
yes, sir.
All quantities, big quantities, right? But where I was going with this, James, is that, even if you're drinking a little bit, but you're doing it consistently, that could be categorized as a problem as well, right? So I don't want people to think that, oh, you have to drink a lot and you have to be drunk to have an issue. It could come in many forms, right? So just, the people listening, they have to, you have to recognize, and you will know yourself if you're being drawn to it. And if you are, reach out to James. Reach out. There's a lot of resources out there. And James, you mentioned stacking your day, which I think is a great strategy for keeping yourself occupied and keeping yourself focused, right? And not thinking about, those bad vices. But what are some other examples of how you deal with, not drinking and not focusing on going down that negative pathway?
I write a lot, and I started writing about this, and it was really just for my own journal. I just started writing a journal on how recovery from one to the other, and I made some notes early on in my journaling about changing my mindset, and I knew I needed to change my mindset first. So I said, I'm going to be an optimist, and I'm coming from a Glasgow background. We tend to be a dour lot. We're great, give you the shirt off our back, but my background is we needed to be more positive, right, in general, right? And I knew that, and I'm not explaining this well, I apologize, but I knew I needed to turn my mindset to an optimist. If I needed to be successful in life, with my health, with my business, with my music, with relationships, whatever, I needed to be an optimist because I find like attracts like. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I just spend my days, I do a lot of writing and I do a lot of studying. I love real estate. I'm kind of a nerd. I love the back end of it. As you know, I'm in this fantastic course and in real estate investment, and I love it. Like I can just sit all day and enjoy it. If I could find a way to make a living taking courses and playing guitar, that's what I would do. So I love to share this. I just had a meeting before I met with you guys this morning with a friend who's going to be a client, and we're talking about an investment strategy for him and his family as they pull equity out of their property. So that keeps me going. Like you have to feel the more you give, the more you receive. It's old school thinking, but it's so correct. And I think you're both saying this. And I believe that give to your clients. If other realtors want my help, I give it to them. I don't have expectations now. Well, you owe me. I don't think that way anymore. I'm an optimist now. I believe the best is yet to come. I believe the next generation is going to kill it. They're going to rock it. They're going to look back and go, I can't believe you guys drank that much. I go, I know, right? I really feel that we've evolved and we're going to continue to evolve. So optimism is a big thing, stacking your day, but you need to keep active. And if you've got kids, it's not hard to do because your kids are active. You got to be involved with them. My generation, the parents weren't involved with the kids that much. We were thrown out on a Saturday morning at 9:00 a.m. Don't come back till dinner. And, now parents are driving kids everywhere. I love to see that they're all involved. So you need to stack your day with things that make you better, whether that's reading, watching sports, playing sports. David, I'm not sure what your interests are, but they need to consume you in some way, in a very positive way. Alcohol is not good. Playing sports is good. Reading is good. Learning your craft. Real estate's a craft. I get excited every day. I know so much more in 9 years now than I did 9 years when I started. I didn't know anything. I was in my mid 50s when I got into real estate, and I was like, and I know so much more about it now. I love that every day I learn something new. So you've got to be excited about life. And I wasn't excited before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you've touched on so many points here. And I agree with like the stacking your day is so critical. I don't care what industry, what business you're in. Too much idle time is not healthy for anybody. So you've got to figure out, okay, what's my day tomorrow? I've got this group. What am I going to do for that? Whether it's a workout, whether you're going shopping, whether you're going to see a friend, plan something, put it in your calendar and get it there. But I'll tell you something else. Like I deal with a lot of real estate agents, obviously. And the successful ones, one thing that so many of them have in common is that they've had mentorship from other real estate agents. They were fortunate enough when they got in on the ground floor, whether they got in their 20s or in their 30s or their 40s, like it might have been their second or third career. But some of them are really lucky to latch on to somebody who's experienced and gave them that mentorship. So this is how I do it without fear of, this guy's going to take away my business, because you can't look at life that way. And you got to be willing to share it and be willing to mentor somebody else. And David and I have discussed this on many episodes, over time, how important that is to us, the mentorship that we've had. And it's not, sometimes in my life, it's not a lawyer necessarily mentoring me. It's somebody else, a coach in the sports field, parent, there's a good family friend. Like there's a lot of places where mentorship can come from, but there are a lot of agents out there, successful agents, who are very willing to share their success. And even when times are tough, like right now. So, if you can talk to people like that. So what are you doing right now? We're in the middle of this drought. So what are you doing? And you talk to one guy who says, I'm waiting for the drought to be over. When the market gets better, I'm back in business. And then you talk to, other guys. No, I'm trying to do this, and I'm going to try and do that. And I'm going to try and do this. Not sure what's going to stick, but I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and try and figure it out. What are you doing? You share stuff. It's so much healthier because no one has the magic formula, but sometimes certain things work, sometimes certain things don't work. And why not share it? Don't be afraid. Sure. I talk to other lawyers all the time. Like, I want other lawyers to be successful. I want others to be good. I need them on the other side of my deals, because that's good for my clients. I need good lawyers on the other side of deals, not lousy lawyers that aren't paying attention, don't know that we had 4 new laws passed in the last couple months that affect our transactions. Right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always prepared to share that. So, you can't try and be successful and practice in whatever your business, be in fear of your competition. You have to embrace the competition and help others. You do that, and like you say, James, you help somebody else. It's amazing how much that helps you.
Yeah, agreed. I would suggest to any new realtor, regardless of their age, if they're getting into the business, not necessarily a team, but if they can find a mentor, a person or group that they can go to ask questions about the business and so forth, be fantastic. I strongly recommend that. I didn't have that when I started in the business, and I was raised in an environment where you don't ask for help. You just don't. So, and I so regret that now. I think when I started, I should have joined maybe a team or something where I could have asked a lot of questions, rookie questions. I'm still asking rookie questions. What's it Benjamin Franklin said, when a man is finished changing, he's finished. So continue to ask questions, continue to grow, so I highly recommend that. And I agree with you. And I've had some great realtors that I've interacted with that, unfortunately, we just had a deal in passing. And of course, they go away, and we have we didn't stay in touch, which is too bad. Because, sometimes you're doing a deal. I had a deal, I'm in Niagara, and I had a deal in Scarborough late last fall. The other agent was fantastic. She was very professional, and you stay on Facebook and stuff, but you need to have a mentor. I couldn't agree more, David. And I think people are maybe nervous to ask for help because it makes them look weak, but it's not weakness.
Right.
When
Right.
you're asking for help, there's strength there. If you
Right.
truly want the help to grow, that would be my 2 cents on that. Great point.
Like I know for a fact, because I see it all the time, and I've seen it for many years, what goes on at your place at Sutton Summit. Okay. And I know how hard, David works and Sabia to create opportunities, training sessions and other mentoring programs, and there's support, and they're constantly evolving and pushing that stuff. So it's available. And then there's so many agents that just won't take advantage of it because they think, no, I don't even want to call David or Sabia and run something by them because they think that I don't know the answer, and maybe I should know that, or I should feel them out. So I don't want to go to them. I don't want to use those resources because it makes me look bad. So, and it's the wrong thing. And I get the same thing in my business. I've got some young lawyers in our office that are afraid to talk to me about something that they don't understand, or they're not sure about, or just to run it by somebody because it's, then David's going to know that I don't know this, and maybe I should know this. And it's the wrong thing. And because when they do come to me, I don't ever slam them and say, why don't you know that? And you should have known that. Or why didn't you, what are you doing there? How come you don't, that's not my attitude to them. Like, I want to encourage them to come to me, but there's still a reluctance. It's certain personalities that just won't do it. Others welcome it, and they take advantage of it. And right, David, I'm sure you get that all the time. Like, you got some people that just, you never hear from, and others that are constantly running things by you or saying, help. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, we encourage, we have such an exceptional open door policy, and there's never a question too small or too big. Like, I want my realtors to come to us with anything, right? Because we've been around for 37 years, and my predecessors, they had this remarkable 3-minute callback guarantee, right? And if you think about it, 3-minute callback guarantee today, it's really the standard, it's the norm, it's kind of what everybody expects. But 37 years ago, it wasn't. But what that did in our company, and for our agents, is we got involved very early on with any issues that ever came up. And the earlier we got involved, statistically speaking, the more we were able to control and contain the issue and keep it from getting larger and from escalating, right? And we Sabia and I were very mindful of that. This is something we discuss almost on a daily basis. We make ourselves available, and we want to get involved very early on in any issues that arrives, because we know that when we do, we contain them and we keep them from escalating, right? It's kind of like pouring gasoline in a fire. If you know that, instead of pouring gasoline, you can pour a different substance and get that fire under control quickly before it spreads, then that prevents further damage from occurring. And as a management team, we're very mindful of that. We have an open door policy, and we want everybody to come to us with all their questions, no matter how small or big they are, so we can get involved very early on, and we can help our realtors through that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest pillars of our success, is the support that we offer to the brokerage. And again, I think it ties into the culture, it ties into that abundance mindset, it ties into that team spirit, right? Because not only do we emulate that as a management team, but we encourage other realtors to be that support system for other realtors. So Brian and Jack, they had a realtor support group where they had a number of realtors in the brokerage that were the support realtors that realtors could call and ask them questions, right? So it created this whole environment of help and support, and that's the pillar that our brokerage is built on. And that's really been our differentiating factor over the years. Is James, you mentioned it, it's a lonely business out there. It is, and agents deal with the turmoil of forging these strong relationships, these very intensive relationships when they're working with clients. And when the transaction's completed, that falls off. And it's such an abrupt change in that relationship that the one constant that remains is the relationship and the support that the agents have with the brokerage. Right. And I think that's important, because you need a system of support around you, right, in order for you to thrive, and it's amazing to see, like, some of our top realtors will call Sabia, will call me and just want to brainstorm, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Right. And we just brainstorm, and sometimes, that's the support that they need. But we very much have an open door policy at the brokerage, and we very much want to get involved very early on in any questions that happen, because, in the 37 years that we've been around, it has shown us that the earlier we get involved in any issues, the sooner we contain them, and we keep them from escalating. So that's been our secret weapon, David, over the years, is that 3-minute callback policy. And it seems so normal today, but 37 years ago, it was definitely not normal. But it's something that we've hung on to, and it's something that's very near and dear to our heart.
Yeah, James, I'm curious to hear your answer to this, or for you to describe it. We always hear about people that have addictions, whatever it is, and it's not until they hit rock bottom at some point that they have that moment. They say, okay, now I'm ready to go get help. So how did you decide 3 years ago, okay, enough's enough, and have enough conscious thought to say, I got to go get help? Like, this wasn't an intervention of somebody else dragging you out. It was you chose at some point, you had the inner strength to do it, to say, okay, enough of this.
Great question, David. And frankly, until the person who has an addiction decides in themselves to quit for themselves and for no other external reason, I don't think they'll quit. So that morning I woke up and I realized I wasn't quitting for my ex-wife, or for a job, or for my clients, or for I was quitting for me, because I quit before for periods of time. Quitting's easy. But for a new quitting permanently and changing your life and your lifestyle and making that the most important thing in your day without making a big deal about it, it's always there. It has to be inside the person. Quick story. friend of a friend reached out to me last fall. He and his partner have a young man. He's in his early 20s, and he's clearly going down a very bad path of alcohol. And they asked to meet me. I went and met them, and we talked for an hour. And you could tell the mom was very much loves her son and all this, but she was in denial of where he really was. And enabling is a term you hear in addiction a lot, right? People are doing their best to keep them alive, but they're really just feeding. And she called me a few weeks ago, and she says, it's still like, what do I do? And I said, you're not going to want to hear this answer. I said, but until he decides to stop, he won't stop. And it's heartbreaking because she's upset, his mom, but that's how addiction is. Some people get there, some people don't. Some people want to get there, but by the time they think they're almost there, they have an overdose or something, as David's stats earlier. But really, that's what it is, David. You've got it. It's inside. You've got to wake up that morning and go, I'm done. It's how I quit smoking. 20 years ago, I quit smoking. I still walk by someone with a cigarette, and just for a brief second, it smells amazing. It's terrible. It's horrible, right? Yeah. But that's how you quit an addiction, and it's got to be every day. That's the focus. Like but it's got to be for you inside, no one else.
Well, guys, I think life is beautiful. And not only is it beautiful, but it's full of adventures, and now I think we live in this society where we can do anything we want, whether you want to become a pilot, whether you want to scuba dive, whether you want to explore, whether you want to go hiking, whether you want to, travel to the most exotic places in the world, whether you want to experience virtual reality, it's all at our fingertips, right? And I think the message is, go and explore, live. Be excited, love life. You need to start loving life. It needs to become addictive, right? And it needs to become joyous, and you need to wake up with a purpose. And if you can do that, everything else is going to fall into place. And I think, being happy and it coming from inside you is what needs to happen. So James, thank you so much. We're running short on time today, but what a great story. It's beyond inspirational. And if you'd be open to it, I'd love to keep working. I don't know what that looks like, but I'd love to, be that sense of support for anybody out there listening that has an issue. Reach out to James, reach out to David Korman, reach out to me. We'd love to talk to you. And we'd love to be there for you guys and support you in any way we can. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
And James, people should also tune into your podcast, right? You have a podcast that's Sober and 60.
I do.
You recorded episode 3, which is amazing. So people can find that on all the major platforms. Please look out for it. James, thank you for joining us. And everybody, stay sober, love life.
Yes.
And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you, everybody.